Okay, it's been about 24 hours since this was juiced, and here is just the totally untouched juice, and it looks about the same. You know, it doesn't have the same consistency as the other ones. You can see it's layered there. Trying to get that back lid a little bit there. I don't think it's fermented any yet though. It was pretty cool in here last night. And then there's the sapa, which is the or the debauch, the grape honey, and that just has a beautiful even syrupy honey-like consistency to it. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? And then here is the defrutum, which is about half its original volume, and it also has a nice amber color to it. It's looking nice. And then here's the ones that were really just pretty much just pasteurized unknowingly by the ancients, cooked down just a little bit, and we'll see how that lasts. This particular one was sealed, remember, with just some olive oil, but that'll probably keep out the yeast from outdoors. So all right, so we're gonna let these hang for a while, but just wanted to see how they were after one day. I'm curious to see about the fermentation of this. This is what I'll be updating, because this is the only thing that's going to have any action, we believe. And the reality is, the fermentation process of fermented wine, the fermentation and preservation process of fermented wine is a much more complex process than that of simply preserving the juice. Hi everybody, we're back in my kitchen today to see what the latest results are on the ancient juice preservation experiment. Now in part one, juiced the grapes and bottled them up like with some ancient recipes from Columella and other ancients, trying to determine if they could preserve grape juice, contrary to what many, particularly the Catholics, seem to state about the wine at the Last Supper had to have been alcoholic, because they couldn't have preserved juice until that late in the season. So here we are. I'm going to go ahead and this is the juice that we did nothing to. Came straight out of the juicer into this cup, and I just tinted a little bit of wrap over there so we wouldn't get bugs or something in there. And it's been sitting out here for 2 weeks now. So let's taste it and see what we got. It tastes mostly like juice still. There's a little bit of a vinegary flavor for sure. Slightly bitter. I never saw it bubble or anything like that. I don't think it really fermented. There's a couple little bits of mold on there that got in there. But otherwise, I think actually you could just juice grapes, put them in a jar, put them in your basement. Now it is winter, so it's been, you know, a little bit cool in here. But I think you could just put them in your basement, and that grape juice would last down there for a while. Obviously it doesn't taste nearly as good as it did when it was brand new, fresh. So this wouldn't be what we'd consider the noblest wine, as is stated about the wine at the wedding in Cana. Oh, and by the way, another one of the uses of the alcoholic wine, of course, the Bible does talk about it used for medicinal purposes, people in extreme anguish or pain. Also, Jesus told John to put a little in his water. And so again, the alcoholic wine put into the water would purify it, even though they didn't really know about microbes back then. Jesus did. All right. Now, we have some other versions here. Here's the juice that we cooked down, like one of Columella's recipes said there, to 1/10 its original volume. So basically it was brought to a boil almost, and then bottled up, and we sealed it up just with olive oil here. So just like some amphora were found in Galilee, in the Galilee area, sealed in the kind of in the basement of a house, they think, with olive oil around the rim. And so we're going to dilute this back into its original volume, but actually we'll dilute it even further, because that seems like what they might have been drinking a lot back in those days. It was more like a grape drink, you know, not just the pure fresh juice of the grape, unless they described it that way, the blood of the grape or the fruit of the vine. This is the tester. Just dilute it a little bit. Mentioned earlier that there was a study that showed that putting the water in actually reactivated the flavor, so we'll see. I can taste the olive oil a little bit, which is strange. Delicious grape beverage. Not like something you get at the store. Totally different flavor, of course, with the fresh grapes. I tell you what, after drinking water all the time, this would really be a treat. I'm going to try the one without the olive oil. Alright, now we've got what we call the defrutum. This was cooked down to half its original volume. Fresh grape juice cooked to half its original volume. This was nicely sealed with rubber. I think this is exactly the same condition as we put it in there 2 weeks ago. So we'll pour a little in here. Add the water. And there, that's still pretty close to the original thickness, looks like. Interesting, interesting. It is a different flavor than the jelly. It really it tastes a lot like this sapa, which is also known as grape honey, and it really has a kind of a honey flavor to it almost. It's not like a Concord grape jelly. It's a grape honey type flavor, so it'd be a very sweet, refreshing drink after much drinking of water. Reserved for special occasions. Interesting, very interesting, and just tasty. And lastly, the sapa. I mean, I can tell also that it's not going to age. It is condensed enough and sweet enough that it is simply going to be preserved like that indefinitely and can be reconstituted at any time. Well, and even though we don't really need to test the sapa, we can use it as a delicious condiment. Grape honey. The reality is, alcoholic winemaking is a much more complex process than simply preserving the juice. The winemaking would require the additional of more yeast to really get the fermentation process going there to its fullest. And then and most wines today certainly have a secondary fermentation, and that's where the wines are laid up for years so that the malic acid is changed to lactic acid, so it's a much smoother flavor, so it doesn't taste bitter. So if there wasn't a secondary fermentation in ancient times, that would be some raunchy taste in alcoholic wine, which certainly they did have. But the point we're trying to make here is that the word wine in the Bible can connote either or, alcoholic or non-alcoholic wine. For example, it's known that the Thracians sold wine that was so thick it had to be scraped from the wine skins. So that would be like this sapa cooked down even further. And the thick Thracian wine is described as having, by the ancients, as having been stored in new wineskins, just like in the parable Jesus uses and says the word new wine. So again, wine in the Bible doesn't always mean alcoholic wine. Really what happened in our language, in the English language, the word wine more specifically came to connote alcoholic wine during the Prohibition, when there had to make a legal distinction between juice and alcoholic wine. And there is still even another carryover in our language. The word wine press, for example. What comes out of a wine press? Well, it's not alcoholic, I'll tell you that. We just did that in part 1. So there you have it. certainly juice can be preserved with very little difficulty, and the ancients knew how to do it, and juice was used as a common beverage for special occasions, things like that, because mostly everybody was drinking water all the time. Well, and then hopefully we also answer the question as to whether Jesus would have given 150 gallons of alcoholic wine at a party where perhaps pregnant women were there. You know, did he put a warning label on it, or did they already know not to drink wine, pregnant women? It's a good question. Think about it.